What's up, everybody? Welcome to the show. This is Fantasy NBA 101. He is Bill. I am DWill. We are talking about dominating your head-to-head leagues. We've gone through a series. If this is your first video, go back and check it out from the beginning. We are doing entry level. It is Fantasy 101 for a reason. This is entry level stuff. If you want to watch along and learn some stuff, we would appreciate it. Bill, how the heck's it going, man?
I'm doing great, David. Glad to be back. Another week in Fantasy Basketball 101. I'm loving you guys' support and questions that I'm getting on Twitter. It's been fun engaging with you guys. Keep it up. Follow me and David on Twitter. His is at NBA DWill21. And I am at William is Bill.
So today we are going to talk about navigating trades. And I have a few rules that I use, and I will not, I'm not the type of person to be like, well, if you don't follow these rules, you just don't get it, because there's more than one way, right? There's more than one way to be successful whenever it comes to fantasy basketball. There's hundreds of ways. You look at the amount of fantasy basketball content that's out here, and these guys that have successful shows, Josh Lloyd with Locked On, his strategy is different than Dan's strategy. Dan is successful, Josh is successful, Aaron Brewski, and like, these names are some of the most successful names in the business, and none of these guys have the exact same strategy. Right. So I'll share a few of the things that I tend to kind of lean toward whenever it comes to navigating trades, and Bill is going to do the same thing. And we'll just kind of, try and guide you along the way. And what I would recommend that you all do is kind of build your own, because at the end of the day, we can give you all the advice in the world. We could win every single league that we're in. But when you push that button to either send the trade or accept the trade, it has to be something that you're comfortable with. If it's not, then you're going to be questioning yourself over and over again. And I found myself in a position where I talked to other people about something and I went against my gut and it came back to bite me. Doesn't always happen. It has happened before. And I will tell you that it feels worse whenever you go against your gut and you kind of lean on some of the guys that you were talking to. So I don't want to put you all in that situation, but I'm happy to share some of the knowledge that I've learned over the time that I've spent playing fantasy basketball. But Bill, I'm going to let you start on this one. I think you started on the last one too. I'm putting you under fire right off the bat. When you are looking at trades, I'm going to back up. I'm going to start off with a simple question. How early in the season do you start sending trades out?
Well, see, now this is a two-part question. If you're going with the standard redraft league, I give it some time. But Dynasty, you have to, keep your mind on a swivel at all times all season long. But in a redraft, which most of you guys will be in, it's never really a need to panic too early. I would like, once you get maybe to 4 games in, you're 1-3, 0-4, you need to start thinking about a trade. But I mean, it's really nothing that you should be pressed upon. Like, oh, it's week 2 and I have the same team, I need to make a trade. That's not anything you need to worry about. And if you see an opportunity, like if a guy is underperforming and you have a guy on your team that is overperforming, if you know their history, you know a little bit about them, you can take advantage of some players early in the season, because a lot of times guys have a guy underperforming for a week, maybe 2 weeks, and they're like, man, this guy sucks. I don't want him on my team. Get him out of here. And then, that's when you can swoop in and that's a guy that's going to be better than he is throughout the season.
And that's, we kind of touched on this on the last episode. We talked about navigating the waiver wire and not dropping those perennial top 50, top 75 guys. What happens is you get a lot of people that hold on to those guys, even though they're underperforming. And that's the time to pounce. So for me, I've made, we're just, what are we? We're like 2 weeks into the season right now. And I have made 2 trades already. And the 2 trades that I have made have both been situations where I had a guy that I felt was overperforming. And so I sent a trade offer out for a guy that I think is going to finish a round ahead of him in fantasy. Short term, it's biting me. The one of the trades that I made, and again, when we're talking about this stuff, we want it to be generalized. I'm going to mention a couple players' names here, but it's actually I'm not even going to mention the players because it doesn't matter. Like I had a guy that I took in the 3rd round, and he was playing very, very well. There was a guy on another team that wasn't playing all that well. He was a 2nd round draft pick. I feel like he is going to finish at 2nd round or better value. And so I sent the trade offer, and the guy accepted it immediately because he was frustrated. His guy was underperforming. And that's what you have to look at. So like Bill said, there's no reason to panic. And I wasn't necessarily panicking whenever I was trading. My team, both teams that I traded with, were in good shape. Like I'm not leading the league, but I'm in the playoffs. I'm near the top of the league. And after 1 week, you're not going to be too far buried anyway. So when the way that I approach it is looking for value. If you have a guy that you're confident is going to finish at this level, and you have a guy on your roster that is outperforming what he's supposed to do, maybe you can, kind of finagle your way in there and get a guy that's going to bring you more value over the course of the season. You look for that hot guy, that guy that is doing more than what everybody thought he was going to do. And a lot of times that is a younger player, because when a veteran like this year, Bojan Bogdanovic, he is lighting the world on fire, but nobody believes that he is going to be this player that he's being right now. So you're not going to get the type of value out of him
because he's like 34, 35 years old.
Yeah. And so a younger player that's off to a hot start, that it's just a given. The majority of rookies that come into this league, they may play well at times throughout the year. And in a rare occasion, you get a rookie that plays well his entire rookie season. But more often than not, rookies do not line up with where they're drafted. And so you draft the rookie at around pick 75, and they're typically going to finish, at the top 100 level, or maybe even further back than that, just because of the inconsistencies. So seeking out a young guy that's off to a hot start and trying to move up to get a guy that is more developed, that has been around, that has done it year after year, trying to find those weaknesses, find a team that's frustrated with the guy, that's maybe the guy's coming back off of injury and he's on a minutes restriction right now. So his production per minute is good, but his overall production is not where you want it to be. Those are the type of things that I look at whenever I'm trying to navigate a trade. Will, what are you looking for whenever, let's, for this discussion's sake, let's just say head to head only, because getting into dynasty, there's a lot of factors into it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that we can do more of a dynasty specific trading. And so for this exercise, we're going to do just head to head redraft leagues only. What are you looking for whenever you're going to initiate a trade?
Basically, a lot of times I'm not really looking for a trade, because I'm pretty confident in my team or whatever. But sometimes when you're in the draft and you end up taking best player available, you can have too many players at one position. Like you can have too many centers, and then you check your lineup and it's like, oh, I can't even play one of these guys because I need a small forward and I have a center and they don't have forward eligibility. Sometimes when you're in that situation, you're like, I just need to trade a center for a small forward or a point guard specifically. So sometimes it's positional, and you can go get good value in that way as well, because a lot of times teams need either a point guard or a center because they need those blocks or assists. So position wise, I think a lot of trades happen that way. Another way you can do a clever trade is if you have a player that is performing well. Like this is a little too early in the season, I'm going to use a name, David's Grizzlies, like John Concher was starting in the season, but you knew at some point Dylan Brooks was coming back. So like that's just an example of something happened this season. But at any point, if you have a player that's performing, stepping into the starting lineup, especially for a month or so, that name's going to have a lot of value. But you know that the starter's coming back and your guy more than likely will go to the bench. that's a way that you can try to do a sell high on that player for another player that may be starting all season. So that's just a clever little tip right there. And we'll get into sell highs, I assume, at some point in this show, but that's an
Yeah.
example of it.
So we can go into that right now. That's something you will hear common terms around the industry: buy low, sell high. And so Bill explained to them what that is. What is buy low and sell high? How do you see that?
Right. We've kind of talked about it a little bit, but buy and low is when you have a player at a higher value, they're ranked at a higher value than they're playing. Like if you have a superstar that's playing like in the hundreds, you know, if he's going to be eventually back to the top 50 level, you know, you can try to trade for him while his production is low. Selling high, like I said, you got have a guy playing above his head. You know, the guy normally is in the 100 to 200 range, and he's playing at the 20 to 50 range. Then you would, you know, sell high at that point.
Yeah. So I mean, it's not complex. It's exactly what Bill said. A sell high is a guy that you drafted later in your draft that is way outperforming where you drafted him. And so you're looking to, extract as much value as you can while he's playing at that level, because it's not likely that this guy is going to continue that pace. A sell, buy low. Did I mix that up?
It's
No. Yeah.
You're good.
Sell high. Sell high is a guy that's overperforming, and a buy low is when you have a guy that is overperforming, trying to go out and get that guy that is going to bring you more value throughout the season. So a buy low is a guy that, is struggling from the start. Um, little nagging injuries, something that's keeping them off of the floor longer than necessary. You want to be careful in head to head. You don't want to get too many injured players, because then when it comes to playoff time, you're not going to have enough, like that. We talked about the games, getting the games played, and having a games played advantage in head to head is going to play to your strengths. That's going to help you win your week. So, little stuff, finding a guy that you can get that's going to be a top 50 player, and maybe you can trade a guy that's going to finish as a top 70 or a top 80 player to get that value.
I will also say, when you're doing that, you got to be careful with just going by the rankings. It's a lot of things that go into that, because the rankings are not always right. Even on the site that you drafted on, you got to go into a little bit of the history of the player as well. Like players top 50, the last 3-4 years. Yeah. But if they're normally 150 and they're ranked 50th this year, it may not be a buy low or sell high type of situation. So you have to be careful with those rankings.
Sure, absolutely. And that just comes from research. We talked about homework on this show before, and kind of getting to know, if you're new to the game, you're not going to know, hey, has this guy been a top 50 fantasy player for the last, 5 years and our 3 years? You're not going to know that right off the top of your head. It takes you some time getting into it. And don't just assume because a player is a top 50 real life player that they are going to be a top 50 fantasy player, because that's not always the case. So, Bill, I'm going to throw you another question here. And I want to know, is there any players on your team in a redraft league where you're like, I'm just absolutely not trading this guy? Like, is it a round thing? Like, if you take your first round pick, there's no chance you're trading your first round pick. Like, where's that line for you? Or is it pretty much anybody is available if the price is right?
It's pretty much anybody's available, but also on the other hand, you have to think, if you believe in a player, you don't want to trade them. I think, like, say you have the 10th ranked player, someone offering a 5th ranked player, you can't just say, I'm not trading my guy. You have to look at every situation case by case. But a lot of times coming into a draft, you'll do some scouting on the player, get some information on him. He's a top 20 player and he's playing like the 40th or 50th. You don't necessarily have to trade. You can say, I believe this guy will turn it on later in the season, and just hold on to them and not trade them. So, normally when you're new to this and in a redraft league, there's not a lot of trades that go on. But in some cases they do. You just have to be prepared with what's coming to you.
And so there's one other aspect of this that I want to cover before we get out of here. This is going to be one of our shorter videos, just because trading is extremely complex. There's a lot of things that you have to factor into it. But at the end of the day, if you just stick to simple principles, you're going to be okay whenever you're navigating the trade. And so, what I tend to do when I get 6, 7, 8, 9 weeks into the season, I'm going back and I'm looking at the history of my league. I'm looking at my matchups, and you can go back and you can see the matchups from week 1 all the way in, and you can kind of get an idea of, okay, every team is finishing with this amount of rebounds. Every team is finishing with this amount of assists or this amount of points. And you can look for the areas where you're slacking. And so you may have, for example, you may have rebounds. You're just absolutely destroying everybody in rebounds. You got a lot of bigs on your team. You got a guy like this year, Jared Vanderbilt's a guy that's getting like 8 or 9 rebounds a game. And if you took a shot on him late, that maybe was not an 8 or 9 rebound guy that you were counting on. Well, now you have that. And so you've been destroyed. You're winning rebounds by 60, 70, 80 rebounds every week, but you're losing in 3-pointers. So then at that point, you can look and be like, okay, I can afford to move one of my strong rebounders to go out and get a guy that's going to give me 3-pointers. And that's the team building, the team like your composition makes a difference. Now, we talked a little bit about punting and different stuff like that, but overall, we're talking about just, we need to win 5 out of the 9 categories. So we're winning rebounds, we're winning field goal percentage, we're winning, defensive stats. So we got 4 out of 5 that we're winning on a regular basis. And 3-pointers is the one thing that we're closest on. So now we can afford to move a rebounds guy to go out and get some 3-pointers. And you can, in certain cases, take a guy that might be ranked a little bit lower than what you're giving up in order to get the stat that you need. So you may lean into, the rebounds. You may be able to take that rebound guy and be like, okay, here he is. He's doing good for me. This guy's making 3 threes a game. This guy that that's getting all these rebounds is not making any threes a game, but this guy that's getting all these threes is ranked lower overall. But for your team needs, the guy that's making all of the threes is going to be more valuable for you because you're winning these other categories. And if you add him, that's going to bring you up in the 3-point category. So pay attention to your team composition. It's early right now, early on in the season, your team composition, everybody's still learning, and we're getting some weird injuries. Devin Vassell has been kind of off and on the floor. Kawhi Leonard stuff. You're going to get different stuff every season. There's going to be guys that you don't expect to be out. LaMelo Ball is another big name that was a 1st or 2nd round pick, and he's missed some time. So you're getting to see Terry Rozier has shined. And then Terry Rozier went down. So Dennis Smith Jr. is a guy that's blowing it up right now. You have to watch the landscape of the league. That's why you're watching as many games as you can. And you're definitely looking at the box scores of every game to help navigate you through who you want to target. And that is just one of many things that you have to do whenever it comes to building your team and trying to win your league, because staying active in the league and making the moves to make your team stronger, that's going to be what makes a difference. And what will happen over an 82 game season, a lot of times you will see teams just flutter out. They start getting beat early and they just fold. And there's so many times that I see people, even in like lower money leagues, that they get 6 or 7 weeks into the season and they're in last place and they just stop setting their lineup. They're done with it.
Yeah, you mentioned, trading for threes or blocks or whatever. Another thing to consider is make sure you check the waivers first, because you may not need to make a trade for blocks or rebounds. There could be a stud on the waivers, and then you don't have to trade a good player to another position or not. So you always check that, because especially if you're in an 18 league, a 10-team league, there's going to be a plethora of good players on the waivers, and you don't necessarily have to trade someone that you may not necessarily want to give up. Also, if your team is good, you're winning, you're clearly going to be in the playoffs. Tricky thing you can do is look for a guy that's injured, that's maybe has not played yet, maybe coming back in December, maybe even January, and you can trade for them at a discount, and then they'll be there when you need them. You'll have a stud right going into the playoffs. So that's another thing to look out for. Another thing I would say, you may not be in this situation early, but try to be in a Discord or a group me, a chat type of situation where you can talk to the guys in the league, and guys will discuss players like, I'm willing to trade this guy, I'm willing to trade that guy, and there can be some discussion, and the whole league will know who's up for trade. You can think about what you want to offer, such like that. And that makes fantasy more fun when there's, friendship, camaraderie, discussion, trades. Some leagues have a trade block that's not really that active, but if you can get in a chat type of situation, even on Twitter, that makes it more fun also.
Yeah, absolutely it does. And a lot of leagues may not have something like that. If you're new to this and you're not in a league that's been around for a while, the group me and the Discord, those are fantastic places to be. A lot of the leagues that I play in, we have stuff like that. But there is group chat. Like you can message an entire league if you're on Yahoo, ESPN, Fantrax, Sleeper. There's league chat, and so if there's somebody that you're looking to move, post it out there.
Right.
Some guys are going to pay attention to it, some guys are not. If it's something where you post it in the chat and you're not getting any action, sometimes sending trade offers out. Be very careful. I will tell you, and there are certain circumstances where you can send a trade offer out where it offends the person that you're sending that trade offer to, and then they just won't do business with you. They'll shut it down. They're like, you're sending me this crazy stuff, I'm not even talking to you. So be very selective about what you're sending out. That's we have one guy in a league that I'm in. I've been in this league for multiple years, and every single year he sends out dumb stuff, and he does it in hopes that somebody will accidentally hit accept, like the trade won't get vetoed down. But he does it every single year, and we know that about him, so nobody even gets bothered by it anymore. When we get new people, like if somebody drops out of the league and we add somebody new, we always tell them about him. Like, he's going to send you something, his worst player on his bench for your best player. It's going to happen, guaranteed. But not everybody is going to know that it's a joke. You can't read sarcasm in text in most cases, so be careful whenever it comes to that.
But just enjoy it. Don't get upset.
Have fun with it for sure. So
some people get mad for real.
Yeah, team composition, like looking for a certain stat. And again, 2 weeks into the season, I'm just looking for value. I'm looking for a guy that I have on my roster that I took later in the draft, and I can move him to get somebody that's going to finish higher. Now, I'm not going to, like a guy that I took in the 5th or 6th round of my draft, I'm not going to be able to trade him for a second round player. What I'm looking to do is get value. So if I drafted this guy in, say, round 6, and he's playing at a second round clip right now, I'm looking to get a guy that I think is going to finish 3rd or the upper half of 4th round value. And you can do that. Go back to your list that you had at the beginning of the season, because a lot of times you can look and see those lists kind of give you an idea of where guys are going to finish. Not all of them are 100% accurate. There's always movers and droppers, but you can find value in that. And just be careful navigating the trades. Like, feel free to holler at us. We've answered a number. I know I've answered a number of questions on Twitter from you guys sending them in, and we do appreciate that. But look for value, man. Look for, you got Bojan Bogdanovic. If you find somebody that's a believer in him right now, and you can get a guy that's going to finish as a 5th round value, like, go after it. A top 60, top 75 player for Bojan Bogdanovic, jump on it, because he is not going to finish. Like, he'll be top 90, top 100 at best.
Right. But I mean, you also, on the other hand, you don't have to trade that player. You can ride the hot hand, and see how it goes. So you can go either way.
Yeah. But, hot hand early in the season doesn't do you any good when playoffs come around. So that is, you absolutely don't have to, go out and trade your whole team. That's not what we're recommending at all. Just be very careful navigating it. Look for value. As the season goes along, as you know what categories that you're weak in, either lean into a punt of that category and be like, okay, I've got this guy that does well in that category. Let me get rid of him and strengthen up a different category. Or I've got this category dominated. I can afford to lose somebody to help me in this category. And it's just studying. Look at the numbers. It's very simple, basic math as to, why you're losing this category. Look at those and try to improve small increments. It's not big jumps. You're not going to trade Bojan Bogdanovic for Kawhi Leonard. Nobody's going to do that. So, yep, that's pretty much it. Just buy low, sell high type stuff, and then looking for your team needs. Will, you got anything else before we get out of here, man?
Yeah, that's about it. I mean, a lot of times you'll have a lot of injuries. People have messaged me about, should I pick up this guy? Should I drop this guy? So, like, if you have multiple guys injured at the same time, that is a time to consider a trade. But, if it's an ankle injury, they're going to be out a week or so. It's a concussion like Brandon Ingram. Don't panic. They'll be fine. And just another thing, just always respond to trades. Don't just leave them sitting there.
Yeah,
either counter them or decline them. I really cannot stand when people do that.
Just leave it sitting there for weeks, not answering it. It's like, I know you're on here. I see you setting your lineup, and you ain't even looking at my trade. What is going on?
Yeah.
Well, guys, we appreciate you tuning in. If you like what we're doing, hit the like button, smash it. Dan doesn't like it, but smash that like button. Subscribe to the channel. We have a lot of
softly touch it.
Yeah, you can softly. That's what it is. However you want to do it. We have a lot of basketball content. We've got football content, all 4 major sports, and we've got some other stuff in the works. So keep tuning in. A lot of good stuff coming. Ethan Norfolk and I just butchered Ethan's last name. Ethan Noroff, and do you know who else? Who's the other one? Who's Ethan doing that show with? Is it on? Man, they're doing a Sunday night waiver wire show.
Just subscribe to the channel.
Yeah, there you go. Subscribe to the channel. You'll get the notifications, and we will help you win your fantasy leagues. Go over to sportsethos.com. Sign up for that fantasy pass. You'll get access to all kinds of fantasy analysis, some of the best in the business. We appreciate you guys tuning in. We will see y'all next time.
Peace. Happy Halloween.